Welcome again to this kitchen table chat. You are literally in my kitchen. You can see the stove and the dish towels, and it seemed like this was the right environment to have a conversation about our relationships, which is what this is about. And the title of today's chat is How Life Stages Shape Our Views of the Pandemic and Our Relationships. So, introducing myself again, I'm Robert Waldinger. I'm the fourth director of the Harvard Study of Adult Development. It is, as far as we know, the longest study of adult life that's ever been done. It's followed the same people from the time they were teenagers in the 1930s all the way into old age, into their 90s. And now we've followed their children who are middle-aged. And the big question that the study asks is, what actually keeps us healthy and happy as we go through our lives? So the study has a lot to teach us about just what's happening now in all of our lives, which is that there is so much uncertainty, so much of a sense of crisis. And many of our original research participants went through big crises: the Great Depression, World War II, all the social upheaval of the 60s, the Vietnam War. So they have a lot to teach us about how we stay healthy and happy as we go through hard times. And one of the things that the study keeps teaching us over and over again is that our relationships with each other turn out to be one of the strongest predictors of what is going to keep all of us happy and healthy. In fact, this was information that we didn't quite believe when we started finding this in our data. How could our relationships with other people actually keep our bodies stronger and healthier as we got older? How could they actually predict that we were going to live longer? But it turned out to be the case. Many other studies have found the same thing. So today, what we want to emphasize is that these relationships of ours are our most precious resource as we're trying to see our way through a crisis that's unlike anything most of us have ever lived through. One of the things that was wonderful last time was that over 1,000 people tuned in. Some tuned in live, and then some watched the video of this chat afterwards. But more than 1,000 people said, yeah, we need this kind of conversation about our relationships. So here we are again. You should feel free to share this link with anybody who you think would be interested. The recording will be available on this YouTube channel later on. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can connect on Twitter. It's at Robert Waldinger. You can go to the website of our foundation, www.lifespanresearch.org. Lots of ways to connect and lots of ways to have this conversation together. Last time, you all answered some questions that seemed important to ask about what's happening right now for all of us in our lives. And so the first thing we asked people to respond to was just the question of, what is your biggest concern right now? And no surprise, over 1/3 of people said that family was the biggest concern. 35% of people said, my family is what I'm most concerned about. Health was slightly less. 28% of people were concerned about health, understandably. Fewer people, about 1 in 5, were concerned about their jobs, although I bet that has increased over the week. And 15% were worried about isolation. Not surprised that family and health are the top choices in our concerns. And today we're going to ask you some follow-up questions. So if you take your cursor and you move, I think, to the top right of your screen, you'll see a letter I. And if you hover the cursor over that I, some questions will drop down. So please, if you can, answer those questions, and then I'll report back about what we've all said about these concerns of ours right now. The second question that we asked last time that I'm reporting back on now is, what's your biggest concern in your relationships right now? And there were two that were the top concerns. One was, how do I balance risk and connections with other people? 1 in 3 people said that was their biggest concern. And almost 1 in 3 said that separation from key people was important, was their biggest concern. Being separated from people that they're usually able to be with in real time. These are very strange times because we have this unusual situation in which we are disconnected from many people who we feel very close to and want to stay connected with physically, but we're also more connected to each other in some ways than we've ever been before. So in some ways, we're having too much closeness. Many of us are at home all day long with people who we're not usually home all day with, people who go out to work all day, people who go out to school, or who are in childcare. Suddenly, some of us are in households where we are more together than we've ever been, feeling like, oh, we didn't sign up for this much togetherness. So at the same time that many of us feel too isolated, many of us feel like we don't have enough space. And one question is, what are some of the sources of friction that come up when we are bumping up against each other more? And one of the sources of conflict in relationships that we've noticed in our study of people as they go through their whole lives is a conflict in perspective, that our perspective on what's important in life changes as we go through life. That in fact, where I am in my life, how much of my life I feel like I've lived and how much of my life I feel like I have yet to live, those questions actually shape how I view what's important. And I think they also shape how we see the pandemic. So what do I mean by this? Well, let's do a thought experiment together. First, think about how old you are now. And then divide your age in half. Think about yourself as you were when you were half this age. What was important to you back then? What did you care about the most? And what's in your life now that wasn't in your life back then? So if I think about my own life, half a lifetime ago, I hadn't become a parent yet. I was just starting out in my career and really wondering what I was going to do and where I was going to go in my career, wondering about a very new, intimate relationship. I had just gotten married. All of that shaped how I saw my life, how I saw the world, what was most important. My career, my new relationship, those were the biggest things in my life. Right now, my view of life is very different. A lot of my life is behind me. I'm more worried about the younger generation. Now, these differences in perspective that happen as we get older actually can make us feel like people of different generations just don't get it. They don't understand what's most important. So let's stop for a minute and just think about how different the world looks at different ages. So I'll give you an example about my daily walk. I take a daily walk, and the other day I saw some middle schoolers on my walk, and they looked like they were having a great time, but they were too close to each other. And I was worried about their social distancing and whether they were going to spread the virus. And I found myself getting kind of judgmental. So middle schoolers are these young people who are just discovering the joys of peer groups, friendships. They so want to be together. Think about the difference between a teenager who is just spreading her wings and wanting to be with other kids, and how cooped up she must feel now with the pandemic. Think about the difference between that teenager and a 3-year-old who's used to going to daycare, but now gets to be with parents all day long. It can feel like a great big party. And of course, the 3-year-old doesn't understand the worry and the anxiety going on. Or think about the young adult, the person in their 20s, who's just trying to launch a career, maybe getting their first job or trying to get their first job at a time when suddenly so many jobs are going away, or at least are being put on hold. Or think about people who've just started in a romantic relationship and they're now separated from the person they've just started to become involved with. For that young adult in their 20s, it can seem like the most important things in the world are out there and need to be tended to. Think then about somebody in their 40s, somebody we often call a person in the sandwich generation, someone who's got young children at home, and so they're involved in doing childcare, but they're used to the kids being out at school all day. Suddenly the kids are at home and they need schooling, and they need care, and they need monitoring. Suddenly there's more income pressure because a family where there were 2 incomes might now only have 1 income. That income might be reduced. So there are financial pressures along with new childcare pressures. And then many of us, when we're in middle age, have aging parents who suddenly we're terribly worried about, because those parents are the most vulnerable to the worst effects of this pandemic. And so many middle-aged people with older parents are finding themselves becoming helicopter children. They're monitoring their parents vigilantly to make sure their parents aren't doing anything dangerous. Okay, let's move to the person in their 70s, somebody who might still be quite active and used to being out there in the world, and now trying to balance connection with risk. My colleague, who's a physician, who's trying to balance being in the hospital, taking care of her patients, and staying at home, taking care of her husband who has dementia. And now let's think about our friends and our relatives who are in their 90s, who might be living in retirement homes. Think about those people. People for whom having visitors is what they live for. And suddenly they're being told they can't have visitors. They may be saying, life isn't worth living if I can't have my family and friends come see me. So what do we do in the face of all these different perspectives that people bring to us and show us in our lives? Well, the first thing to remember is that nobody is wrong. None of these perspectives is wrong. And what that means is that it is our job to listen to each other, to really try to understand the points of view of people in other generations and to help them find solutions. If a teenager is desperate to be with friends, help them find ways to do this virtually, more creative ways to hang out together, to have parties, even if it's over video chat. But the important thing is not to make anybody feel ashamed of what they're most worried about and what they're most concerned about. We're all doing the best we can. We don't want to be asking each other, why can't you be different? Instead, we want to empathize with these different points of view and help each other find solutions. And also help each other remember what goals we share in common. Because what we all share in common is that we want to emerge from this crisis healthy and strong. That means that if we keep our physical distancing now, if we don't take risks, if we do wear masks when we go out, if we do all those things that the CDC and our doctors are telling us to do, that we will emerge so that the teenagers can get back to seeing their friends and the 4-year-olds can get back to preschool. And we're all out there back in our worlds doing the things that we care about and that we need to do. So this week, we're asking some different questions. And if you will, I'd be grateful if you'd take your cursor up to the top of your screen, hover over that eye, see the questions, and give us your answers. And then we'll report back to you. So before we move into our question and answer time, which is going to be most of our time together today, I'd like to draw a little inspiration from one of my heroes, Mr. Rogers. So Fred Rogers, as you know, had a children's program for decades. And what was revolutionary about what he did is he talked to kids honestly about difficult things. He talked about death. He talked about difficult feelings. He talked about conflicts in relationships. Nobody was wrong, and he helped support kids in having the feelings that they felt and in being themselves. So as we go into this question and answer period, here's a quote from Mr. Rogers. In times of stress, the best thing we can do for each other is to listen with our ears and our hearts, and to be assured that our questions are just as important as our answers. I love this quote because in his simple language, Fred Rogers is reminding us that we don't need to know all the answers. That in fact, we can't know all the answers, that there's huge uncertainty in our lives, and that we can live with that. And that what we do is we help each other manage the uncertainty as best we can. So now, what I'd be grateful if you would do is share your insights, share your questions, and I'll share your insights on the video and try to say a bit about some of the questions that you raise. So first of all, I'm seeing that there are people on this chat from as far away as Brazil and Portugal and Turkey and Italy. It's great having all of you, and certainly the many people who are here from different parts of the United States. The other thing you should know right now, I'm learning, is that the polls, the questions are only available if you refresh your screen. So if you can go up to the top and that little circular arrow, if you click on that refresh, the screen will come back up, but the poll questions will be there. So please do that. So here's a question. This one is from Renee. Yeah. How can we keep an eye on our teenage daughters and look for signs of isolation? I'm hearing it could get bad. What signs are we looking for? What do we say to them? How do we check on them? This is such an important question because on the one hand, our kids don't want to be micromanaged when they're teenagers. They're just trying out their independence. They need their space. On the other hand, we don't want to leave them too alone. We don't want them to be too much on their own if they are becoming depressed, if they are becoming dramatically anxious or upset in different ways. So signs of isolation are the usual ones that if your child or any relative is not responding to you the way they usually do, if they look more sad, if they look more anxious, talk about it. If they are keeping to themselves and not coming out of their room, make sure that you check in more than once a day and see if they can come out of their room. They don't have to talk to you if you're not the person they want to talk to, but they need to talk with somebody. The other thing is to get our teenagers and all of our kids and ourselves to follow some routines. What that means is we want to eat and sleep at regular times, have regular meal times to the extent possible, regular bedtimes, times both going to sleep and getting up in the morning, because those regular schedules will keep our moods brighter and keep our circadian rhythms more stable. In addition, make sure that we are talking to each other, making sure that people are checking in with the people that they care about. And if you are worried about someone, ask about it. If you're worried that somebody might be feeling like they want to harm themselves, ask about it. You will never put that idea into someone's head. So I'm accustomed to asking people if they have begun to feel like life isn't worth living. And if they do feel that way, talk about it. You will not make it worse. You will only make it better. So don't leave people too alone. Check on them, but at the same time, make sure that they're allowed to have their space when they need it. So another question from Luis. How can we make our elders feel more connected to us safely? Yeah, really important question. Because our elders are the people we would like to come and gather around right now, or bring them to us. Bring them into our homes, apartments, all huddled together. But in many situations, we can't do that. So the way we make them feel connected is to check in frequently. Have video chats going if you have access to a video chat platform. Get them help. If they cannot access a video platform, talk on the phone. Keep the phone chat going. Take them through your day with you as you cook a meal. Talk with them. Leave the phone on speaker and just talk while you prepare dinner. Remind them of things that they like to do and check up on whether they're doing those things. Help them remember things that they might be able to watch on television or listen to on the radio. Also, remind them not to spend all their time listening to the news or watching the news. The news makes us all anxious, and so we want to have limited doses where we get the right information, but we don't take in too much. And this is particularly important for older people who are at home and maybe used to watching television all day. This is not the time to watch television news because it is agitating and disturbing. Here's a question from Katie. Medical professionals and other frontline workers who are not getting the nourishment of family support because they have to self-quarantine while they provide a public good, how can we support them? So Katie, this is really near to my heart because I'm a physician and many of my colleagues are in these situations where they go to work every day, they put on their protective equipment, they work with infected people, which is exactly what we need them to do. But then they have to come home and self-quarantine to keep their families safe. Well, again, just like Luis was asking about with our older family members and friends, that we keep those people connected. So if someone has to stay in their room and we leave their meals for them, and we don't get to eat meals with them, let's eat meals together virtually. If they can have a video screen on and eat with us while we're in the kitchen eating, let's do that. Let's have family routines where the quarantine person is still with the family to the extent that she or he can be. In fact, the other thing we want to do with workers who are healthcare workers or grocery store workers or delivery people is ask them to tell us in detail about their day. We need to be able to let them talk about what they've been seeing and hearing, because sometimes what's going to be part of their story about their day is upsetting, particularly people on the front lines of healthcare. They're going to see things that are upsetting. They're going to need to talk about it. Now, we don't want them talking about upsetting things in front of small children, but let them talk about it with you. If you are another adult and you can listen, it may be hard to listen, but it is one of the things you can do to support the people who are out there doing this very difficult and sometimes traumatic work. It's a really important question. Another question that comes in is, what are the most important things that parents should be doing right now? Well, of course, the first thing is keeping everybody safe, but really important thing is to listen, to try to pay attention to what children are doing, saying, thinking about. Ask them, try to connect with them around the things that they're interested in. It might be a video game. It might be a cat video. It might be something funny somebody shared with them on the internet. Use your child's interests as a way in to talking about bigger things, like how scary it might feel to not know what's happening in this crisis. Some of those bigger things. Start with small things. Start with things that are interesting, funny, amusing to your child, and go from there into deeper conversations. So listening well and connecting around your child's interests may be one of the best things you can do. Another thing you can do is share stories about hard times in your life in the past, how you got through them, how you came out the other end, and everybody was okay if they were. So again, children need some perspective that hard times come, we pull together, we get through them, and then we come out the other side. Here's a question from Joe. Regular schedules keep us stable. Is this also a good time to do or start some things that are new? Joe, that's a great question. So I'm a person who likes new things. So for example, I started this video chat, which is in some ways a little scary for me. I've never done anything like this, right? But I started something new, and it's helped me to have something to look forward to and even get a little nervous about. Not a bad thing. So start something new that you might be interested in starting. Somebody talked about starting to pick up learning a language again, or somebody else has started bird watching from their window. If you happen to have a bird feeder, or you just sit at your window and watch birds come and go as they land on branches outside your window. Try something new. The other, and familiar things are quite important. So also go back to those familiar things. Go back to childhood games. Go back to doing jigsaw puzzles. Anything that you used to do that you enjoyed. So perhaps what might be ideal for those of us who like new things is to have a mix of what's familiar and what's new in your day. But the main thing is to have a routine. Shower, dress, get dressed as though you're going to be going out for the day. Get dressed in clothes that make you feel like you're functioning in your usual way. Here's a question from the Genwell Project. What is your vision for the great celebration of human connection when this is all over? What will be the first thing you want to do when we can get back together? Whoa, yeah. Well, I love the question because it really does help to envision the future we want to have and to envision a future when this is past, which it will be. And I'm not sure what my vision is. I think the first thing I would like to do is to have all of us look back and share our biggest takeaways, the things that we learned that worked the best. We're going to learn surprising things. We are already learning surprising things. I'm learning, for example, that I can connect with people over video chat in a way that I didn't think was possible, that I can get excited about seeing somebody over video chat in a way that I didn't think was possible, so that I actually feel good. I feel excited and better. I couldn't imagine doing that before all of this. So what have we learned, and how might it shape our finding ways to live better? I want to be with people. So the biggest celebration I'm going to have is being with people again in real time without social distancing. So right now I'm taking walks and wearing my masks and keeping 6 feet away. I'm going to take that mask off and spend a lot of time hugging people again. That's my vision. But first, I want us to share our things that we've learned, our best practices that we've learned from this new way of living. So perhaps we'll take one more question or insight, and then we will close for today. But hopefully, without a technical glitch next time, we will do this again next week. So this is a question from Bouquet, who says, when I decide to call my friends, I feel like I can't find anything to talk to them about. It makes me feel that I'm losing my social skills. I know that's not the situation, but it stays there as a distorted thought. Can you comment on this? And what can I do? This is a really important question. So let me think about it in a couple of ways. First of all, Bouquet, notice that you've had a negative thought about yourself. You've made yourself wrong in some ways. That's so common. Right now, we're all under much more stress than usual, so gloomy thoughts are likely to come in. So when things don't work well, we're likely to feel like it was our fault. In fact, it is harder at times to talk with people over video chat or on the phone when we're used to being together in real time. Many of us are finding that. That is not your fault. It doesn't mean you've lost your social skills. So it might mean that you want to develop new ways of being together on video chat. Could you imagine spending time together on video chat where you don't talk? My Zen meditation group meets every Monday night at 7:30, and we do a bit of talking, but we also meditate together. And it feels great to know that I'm meditating with 20 other people. So you and your friends who find that you're running out of things to say could say, let's just take a few minutes now and read together. Or I'm going to read you this poem that I saw today, or I'm going to read you this passage from a newspaper article that I found really interesting. Try different ways of being together, but don't make yourself wrong because you find that it's not working the way it used to. Remember that we're all going to be trying new things and making it up as we go along. So, thank you so much for coming back, for doing this again, and I hope you'll join me again next week. Remember, you can send this link and show people this kitchen table chat by sharing the link on this YouTube channel. You can subscribe to the channel. You can connect on Twitter at Robert Waldinger. Come to our website, lifespanresearch.org. And now I'm going to close with a last quote from Mr. Rogers. He wrote this, which I love. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. He was right. So my charge to all of us is let's look for the helpers in our world, and also let's be the helpers, particularly at those challenging times in our relationship. Let's be the ones who are helping. Thank you. Stay safe, and I'll see you next week.